Tag TV and Tag Radio. Be seen and heard by both technology users and technology producers throughout the state of Georgia and around the world. Low cost, big benefits, powerhouse online branded video and audio has arrived. Tag TV, Tag Radio, there's a lot more to know. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. Suddenly, a multi-level convergent marketplace appears. A marketplace where all modes of communication and information are continually reforming to adapt to the enduring demands of technology, changing the way we create, consume, learn, and interact with each other. Unified marketing, when multiple media and technological products come together to form one product with the advantages of all of them. Greetings, everyone. It's Thursday, February 17th, 2011, and this is a special TAG Premier Member Focus edition of Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mantella. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. On this TAG Premier Member Focus, we explore next-generation media convergence, not just a technological shift or a technological process, the shift within industrial, cultural, and social paradigms that encourage the consumer to react as never before. Unified marketing is the message as we tech talk with one of the world's leading unified marketing agencies, Definition 6, Chief Technology Officer Paul Hernacki. Also the executive architect at the agency, Paul is responsible for direction and strategy of all technologies used to design and implement solutions for Definition 6 clients. Paul, prior to joining the agency some 6 years ago, managed the .NET technological leadership team and Microsoft solutions for Hewlett-Packard in the Americas. A systems and application architect, he has an extensive background in development, testing, and implementation of advanced technological solutions. Media convergence, the reality is more than a mere shift. Unified marketing is engaging the now as we engage thought leadership with one of the industry's pioneers, Definition 6 Chief Technology Officer Paul Hernacki. Paul, welcome to Tech Talk.
Hi, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Well, I think we have an incredibly interesting subject. I think a lot of people in the technology industry, we often think of convergence, and we think of all of the incredible segments and silos where those convergence are impacted by, we call it disruptive technologies. But I think sometimes we forget about the kind of an overarching service, the marketing and the advertising, or what used to be called advertising and marketing agencies, and how they're having to deal with all of this technology and the evolution of quote-unquote new media. So let's talk a little bit about, I think, a description that you hear often, or is getting to be more often. Certainly Definition 6 is described this way. Tell us a little bit about what a unified marketing agency is all about.
Well, Frank, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is very different now than what people would have thought of in terms of traditional marketing or even integrated marketing or interactive marketing. And unified marketing is really about connecting brands and people in motion. The opportunity to connect across all the different experiential mediums has never been more robust or varied. And the pace of change in those areas of opportunity has never been more rapid and multidimensional. Which is what I think differentiates a unified approach to a more classic integrated approach. And what I mean by that is if you look at the opportunity that exists out there in terms of the changes in trends and the changes in culture, the changes that are occurring all around us and the pace at which that's changing all the time. And then you look at the different mediums through which people are having experiences with brands, and whether that's on the web or on television and traditional broadcast or via mobile devices or in social, all the different ways that you can connect with them, and then all the different aspects of the experience from when they're aware that you exist to whether they're engaged with your brand to whether they're transacting with you to whether they've become an advocate of you. All of those different pieces are constantly moving and constantly changing and constantly shifting, and the pace of that change is ever increasing. So what you really need to do in order to be able to connect brands with people in motion is to have that multidimensional approach that allows you to be able to, instead of taking a consistent and repetitive approach with your message that you might have previously, you're now taking an approach of being able to target those messages in an almost surgical manner that can constantly move and shift to where the customers are and how they want to engage with you and what part of the relationship or what aspect of the relationship's life cycle they're at when they're engaging with you.
Is there still reach and frequency and things like push and pull, and or is it all? I think the new description is participatory. Where you're engaging the client. But do you still think in terms of how do you analyze impact and results and those kind of things?
I think many of those terms are still applicable. It's just very different in how they play. So, yes, you are still, measuring, monitoring, trying to determine, how many people you're reaching. Are they the right people? What is the goal of that relationship and how you're trying to reach them at that moment. But instead of it being a funnel, you used to be able to look at it as a very traditional funnel that, you were trying to, be in front of enough eyeballs in order to be able to drive a smaller portion into the store and then a smaller portion to make the purchase. It's no longer a simple funnel like that. People are popping in and out of the, that life cycle at all different points. And it's no longer a simple, being able to try to have that degree of reach and frequency in order to drive X number of sales. You now have to be, part of the experience all throughout the life cycle and allow customers to engage with you as much as you need to be able to engage with them as opposed to simply talking at them or telling them your message.
Is there any way to do it halfway? I mean, what happens if you're too small and you really don't have the kind of budget to do all of the things that you have to do? Is there a formula that says there? I mean, at one point, and I go back to a time when, we had traditional media and there were only a certain number of things that you could, I guess what comes to mind when I hear you talk is that McLuhan point about the medium is the message. All of a sudden technology is the marketing device and marketing is technology. But that said, is there, for some of our listeners, some of our members who aren't necessarily multi-million-dollar budgets, or maybe I should ask, does it require multi-million-dollar budgets to really be effective in this space, or can you do it? Certainly, I wouldn't think you could do it on your own.
It's very challenging to look at everything that's out there in terms of all the different mediums and ways in which you can engage with your customers. And the truth is that some of them have enabled it so that you do not need to have the multi-million-dollar budget in order to be effective. Never before has there been so much power and capability in the hands of people to be able to promote their message in ways that don't require, for example, the Super Bowl television advertisement budget. At the same time, that doesn't mean that those tools can be, simply wielded by anybody and be effective. You still need to have, a great product, a great service. You still need to have a good campaign, a good idea, good idea of how you're going to market. And you need to put those tools in the hands of people that understand how to use them. Now, what you are seeing is that some of even the largest brands out there are rethinking their marketing spend, where they are able to, look at their traditional advertising budget and then, again, be much more surgical in the use of those dollars to see greater results by better targeting the customers they really want in the mediums where those customers are engaging, and to do so without having to use a massive, large budget air cover approach.
I think some of it, it does get to a point where I hate to use the term overwhelming because I think it's a sense of perspective, and if you're involved in it, totally engaged in it, it isn't overwhelming. It's just a whole spectrum of tools. I guess what comes to mind, too, is just recently I've been made aware of Jay-Z and his Decoded promotion. Are you familiar with what they were doing with that? He came out with a book called Decoded, but also it's a video, and they did almost a Da Vinci Code kind of a thing where they ended up having one of those hiding things all over the world where people had to find them, and they were using text and tweeting and all kinds of things in order to find the different hidden pieces in sort of a hunt, and it was all part of this massive promotion that in effect became a promotion within itself. I guess, go ahead.
No, I think what you're seeing is more and more people are doing campaigns like that, and in fact, the music industry has definitely been one that's been leading the way. Many have even cited, bands like Nine Inch Nails, who, did such a tremendous job of using social media and using tactics like that, using, hidden information, hidden details, and engaging with their fans in a very different way than the more traditional marketing. And what you're seeing is, whether it's individual celebrities or, small businesses, large businesses, that if you begin to get into the mediums and understand them, you can find ways to engage with your customers, your target, those people that you're trying to connect with in a very different way that is, not to harp on the word too much, that is more engaging, that makes them part of the relationship as opposed to, somebody who's just a receiver of the message. And you're starting to see more and more innovative use of whether it's video or social or mobile and all the ways that you can connect with people all throughout, their lives and in the ways that make sense for them.
Share an example of a united approach that you guys have done over at Definition 6 for some of your clients.
Well, obviously, one of the best and most heralded examples that we've had is the fantastic work that we've been lucky to have the opportunity to do with Coca-Cola, where we helped them with a piece that's now known as the Coke Happiness Machine, where what we were able to do was to help them with one of their first forays into creating original content as an online, digital video that was essentially an advertisement that was not intended to be for the broadcast screen. And this piece has gotten a lot of work. We're very proud. It's won a Gold Clio, an Addy, as well as many others. And what it did was it basically allowed Coke to connect with their target market around the concept and the branding of open happiness, and to show how people were able to kind of share happiness with each other and then use the social medium as a way to kind of virally share that with others. So they were able to get some tremendous viewership of the video, just people passing it along because it made them feel happy and it made them smile, and then they wanted to be able to share that with others, and they saw a great result of that. And for us, the fantastic thing is it allowed us to bring to bear the unified marketing disciplines that we have within inside of Definition 6. So we were able to do, the script-to-screen, video production, post-production, and editing, help them with the social and the social media discussion and how they were going to promote that video, how are you going to track it, how are you going to capitalize upon that success.
Unified.
So we were able to bring much more unified approach to that.
And one would guess that obviously the efficiency and effectiveness comes out of a single source. I mean, if you had to use multiple sources to do all of those components independent, the integration would be a nightmare to try to get it all coordinated and work together. I guess continuity is still part of the game. I can't imagine. How do you guys do do you do situation analysis the way that we used to? And when you come up to a new client to take a look at what the objective is and then lay out both the social strategy as well as the technical strategy?
Absolutely. In fact, I think what we're able to do these days is, what I would term the old situational analysis on steroids. The amount of information and the amount of data that we have available to us has never been greater. So we're able to use a large combination of different tools and services, from research purposes, listening tools, ways that we can kind of do a deep dive on where are you in the market right now, where are your competitors, what's going on, what are people talking about, what are people saying, how are people engaging. The amount of information has never been richer, and it's extremely important to go through that kind of activity when engaging on a project like that, so that you are delivering the right message, as much as possible in those right moments.
Well, of course, again, I guess the pressure on performance. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of hypothetical thinking going on to a degree. But, of course, another cliche comes to mind, and that is when you know all the facts, there are no decisions. I guess it does make it somewhat easier once you've got some architecture, if you will, in terms of a overall course of action or a general strategy. One thing I got to ask you, because I know that historically, technologically, and marketing-wise, most of those trends often are at odds with each other, especially in a large organization. Now, I know your background is more the technical aspect, although having years now in the marketing and advertising field. But how do you handle the responsibility of being in charge of the technology for a marketing company?
It's a good question, and I'll start with, I would not trade jobs with anyone. I did come from a more traditional technology background, and when I began working in the marketing and the agency world about 6 years ago, there was a pretty significant learning curve for me. And as you stated, at the same, it is a very different challenge working in technology for a marketing agency. You have, kind of forces pulling you in a lot of different directions. What we really need to be able to do for our customers is to help them across all the different technologies and mediums that they need to be able to connect with their clients. And what that means is, whether it's on an iPad or a different tablet, whether it's on an Android or an iPhone or a BlackBerry, whether it's on the broadcast screens, whether it's going to be, on the web, whether it's within social, is it in Facebook, is it in Twitter? And one of the interesting challenges is we as an organization have to enable and empower our people to use all these different technologies as part of their daily lives. And we talk about it in the terms of living a digital lifestyle, that we can't be good advisors to our clients unless we as an organization are heavy consumers and users of all these different technologies. Now, that does mean that we don't get to behave like a traditional IT organization that's supporting a company, where we have to be much more open. We have to be fundamentally supportive of that kind of an open environment, while still trying to, of course, manage costs and security and some semblance of order to how we do it all. But we have to be ahead of the curve on all that's new and all the change and all the things that are happening.
Good luck
and
on that.
We have to know it, as well as anyone, which presents an interesting challenge. At the same time, in marketing, they have to make things happen in moments. They have to be able to make decisions very rapidly, very quickly, which means we have to enable them with technology where we can't, be even perceived as the traditional, Dr. No in IT that is always telling marketing why they can't do it. We have to be the ones that say, yes, and let me talk to you about how that would be possible.
Well, they're inseparable. I mean, I'm not clear on, there was a time when you would have said that technology was more science than art, I think, wouldn't you? And I would say that marketing was more art than science. And now it's a case where it's so deeply integrated that the technology isn't about distribution or delivery or even necessarily, effectiveness or efficiency. It's actually part of the marketing process itself. It's part of the selection of the technology, becomes part of the marketing strategy.
And I don't know that I'd agree. I'd agree that it's perceived that one was more art and one was more science, although I truly believe that, each is almost equal parts art and science and always has been. I still do believe that technology has always had an aspect of art to it, as much as it has its equal weighting of science. But I think what's happened in the past, 5 to 10 years has really shown us that marketing and technology is now part of the DNA or the fabric of marketing, that it doesn't exist, or it can't truly exist independent of the other. So, it's not just interactive, but part of how it all happens. If a marketer doesn't understand technology and IT, and that their best friends, can often be those in technology, I think there's a disconnect that's going to, severely undermine your opportunity to be successful. It's a true marriage, and even if you're just talking about, a new campaign and a new idea and how you're going to get the message out there, understanding all the aspects of technology that come into play to make that possible, is critical to how successful you're going to be. I'd argue that, any branding expert who doesn't think technology should have a say at the table or a seat at the table is missing an opportunity to really be far more successful than they could otherwise. Well,
I mean, specifically, technology is playing, as you're pointing out, more and more of a major role in branding. I guess that when, clearly some of the things you've already cited, but specifically as it relates to branding, how do you see technology playing a role in the future?
Yeah, I think it's been a massive shift in kind of the evolution of marketing as things have gone more digital. But if you look, the traditional ad spot, the jingle that came from Madison Avenue, and the magazine ads that were pushed out there, that was kind of where branding began its relationship with the customer, and then you had to continue it inside the store and throughout that experience. And now what's happened is the ways that people can connect whether it's on a mobile app or on a mobile website or with inside social channels. It's all become very married with technology, and the truth is that reflects upon your brand. So if your website has been hacked, and defaced, that affects your brand. If the user experience and the user interface of your mobile app was poorly designed, or the underlying web services being used to pull data for that mobile app are slow and creating a poor experience for the user, your brand is affected. So the word brand, and I'll credit our CMO with 6 years ago teaching me the phrase that brand is the space that you occupy in a consumer's mind. And that space is affected by every element of the experience that they have with your brand. And more of those experiences are happening through digital and technically enabled channels. So it's critical that those pieces are there and are solid. If not, then it is going to impact your brand.
Well, now we talked just a few minutes ago, and we're quickly running out of time. I can tell you, Paul, that I'm fascinated by your knowledge and experience, and I think our audience is as well. And we could probably go on for some time because I think it's both educational and enlightening at the same time. Talk a little bit about I brought out the point about art and science, at least from my perspective, and I understand I tend to agree that there's a little bit of both, of each and both. But let's talk about the evolution of the discipline of marketing. Can you maybe get into how do you feel about the changes in technology forcing the evolution of those disciplines?
It's interesting. I think the changes in technology that we're seeing are kind of they're driving marketing, and marketing's driving them. So people used to think of technology as you'd go to work and there you had these systems, these green screens that you'd use, and then you'd be able to use email, et cetera. But then you'd go home and you weren't heavily utilizing technology at home. And now it's kind of flip-flopped, where people tend to have more impressive technology at home and on their person than they often do from their corporate IT. And what's happened is people started to use it more and more for their own personal experiences and the ways that they would connect with companies, that started to force companies to learn how to deal with that in kind. And as the technology was advancing and people were, everybody was armed with a smartphone. People are having 3G everywhere they go. Wi-Fi is becoming near ubiquitous. As that technology advances, marketing's now forced to, move even faster to try to stay ahead of it, to be able to connect with people in those mediums.
Not Windows-centric technology that follows you around, an explosion of digital devices that allow for you to, as you point out, the promise of what we had foresaw even a decade or so ago, and that is the prospects of ubiquitous computing or access capability to knowledge and information the way that clouds present. I mean, there's just a spectrum of things that have got to be impacting so much of what's going on in your world. One last question, and I apologize because we're running out of time, and I really appreciate you taking so much time with us already. Give our audience a little taste of what they might be surprised about as far as one thing about Definition 6 that you think would surprise our listeners and TAG members to know about Definition 6.
Surprised about. Well, for starters, there was no Definition 5. We started as Definition 6.
Actually, is there a philosophical message in Definition 6? Is there an actual, I don't put you on the spot, but it seems like somewhere along the line I've read something about either mythology or something of science fiction or something that has to do.
No, it came from the original model that our founder and CEO, Michael Kogan, came up with when he started the company about basically the 6 levels of communication of how people would use technology and marketing to engage with each other, engage with their clients as they kind of grew in their level of sophistication. Now, this was almost 14 years ago. So while the model is still applicable, it's interesting to see that we've really, as an industry, graduated to kind of realize the vision that he had when he created the 6 definition model of communication.
Well, I stepped on your response. You were going to tell us something surprised about what people would know about Definition 6. I think one thing they just learned was where the name came from, but is there anything else? Another thing I've got to be fascinated, because you were saying this before, we live in a world of digital natives, people that have never lived outside of the existence of what you're talking about, demographic now-wise. And that philosophy that I've often used is that if you're going to sell technology, use technology. I think one of the things that a lot of our people are interested to note is that you are using the technology and living in that space yourselves in order to be able to know and understand what you present, practice what you preach, kind of thing.
Yeah, we firmly believe that you have to live it each and every day, that you have to not discourage your users and block them from using Facebook and Twitter at work, but you have to encourage them to use the mediums and to understand it. You can't have an organization that says, and we only allow these devices. You have to find ways to still achieve the necessary security and organization while supporting their use of those things. So that's something we strive very hard to do, and it's an interesting place to work. We have a lot of fun with it. We work hard, we play hard. I think a lot of people, when they meet people from our organization, what's interesting is because we are able to speak as strongly as we do in all the different arenas of marketing, creative technology, video production and post-production, that people often get the impression that we, based on who they just spoke to, that maybe we're just a creative shop, or that we're just a technology shop, or that we're just in video production and post-production, that they are impressed with the caliber of people we have in each of these areas, but they're surprised when they got to meet more of the organization. We design and develop e-commerce sites that process millions of PCI-compliant dollars every day while also editing almost all things Elmo. So, we kind of stretch across what people would perceive as the highly technical fields to the highly creative and highly engaging, and those focused on the strategic and the branding and the very e-marketing focused capabilities. So
I'm thinking a good way to describe you is a unified marketing agency. No wonder
I think that would be perfect.
Well, Paul, thank you for taking so much time with us out of your busy schedule. I know how crazy it is, but thank you so much for joining us today on Tech Talk.
No, thank you, Frank. I enjoyed being here, and it was a pleasure.